I think we all agree that we don't want to put police officers in harm's way, but we don't want to put the public in harm's way. And I think that this isn't an all or nothing situation. It's not either the police officers or members of the public. And I noted, as my colleague was saying, you know, when you kiss your spouse goodbye who's going to work as a police officer, you wonder if they're going to come home. But I would suspect, given the statistics that I've read here, there are a lot of black families who, when they kiss their kids goodbye during the day, particularly young black men, they have the same fear. And that's not what this country's supposed to be about. I mean, we're here in the state, we can't do a whole lot about the inane federal policies that are stripping children from their parents at the border. That's a federal issue, and one that I wish we could do more for. But we do have the ability here to expect that not only our police officers are going to be safe in their jobs, but that our community, and the question when you call the police, and I know this has occurred, even in my own community. You call the police because you have a situation at home where you need intervention from public safety officials. You have a child who's gone a little bit off the rails, or a bad drug reaction by a family member, or someone is in a domestic violence situation. You want to feel like when you call law enforcement, they're going to help you resolve the problem and not end up either badly injuring someone or being shot themselves or shooting someone. And, you know, the statistics here are just so troubling that in California in 2017, officers shot and killed 162 people in California, only half of whom were armed with guns. So you got to ask yourself, what's going on here? And that's really, I think, why we're all here. We want to figure out what can we do to make our communities safer, and to make the job for law enforcement safer. And I would submit that my colleagues' concerns about a guy who goes into the trunk of his car and pulls out a shotgun and starts shooting people, that to me is the best argument you can make for better gun control. So I don't know if we're going to get that far. You know, we have some issues that we have to address when that comes to that issue, but that situation was never going to be resolved differently. But we do have situations where we have law enforcement who's called to an event, and the first instinct, it would seem to me, has got to be to how do you resolve this favorably for everybody, rather than how are we going to end up with people in the hospital or people dead. So for me, it's got to be a culture shift. We're talking about a culture shift here, and I have right here, I happen to have access to the people who are doing post, who are doing the training, and there is some substantial training out there to do de-escalation. I want to thank you for recognizing that there are ways to resolve these problems that don't call for the use of deadly force. And that if we train our law enforcement people so that when that adrenaline starts to pump, because it will, that they know how to take steps to de-escalate a situation. So I'll use as an example, the whole issue with domestic violence used to be, and probably still is, the most dangerous call that law enforcement gets, because you have people whose emotions are heightened, and if there's a firearm or a weapon available. So when we started adding women to the police force, and women going out on these domestic violence calls, we saw a significant de-escalation and a more favorable set of results because the women who would go in had the ability, I'm not quite sure what it was, to sort of ramp things down a little bit. And I think that's what we're looking for. We want better results when law enforcement goes up. Better results for law enforcement. I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement. I have great regard for these people, and they do put themselves on the line. But I would submit to you that their goal is to try to keep the public safe. And so it's that mindset that we need to start developing in greater numbers. And, you know, when you look at these statistics, I mean, police in Kern County have killed more people per capita than in any other United States county. And I don't necessarily, I mean, these are just facts that I think are unrefutable. And then studies show police kill unarmed young black men at more than 20 times the rate they kill young white men. That's just a staggering statistic. And so I'm sort of in a plaintive element here where I want us all to be safer. And I think that the measures and the amendments that the author has taken, I think it now creates a strong bill. I don't think it's an all or nothing. Why should it be all or nothing that either police are going to be able to use deadly force or they're going to get killed because they're not able to use deadly force? I don't think that's the, I mean, take a look at Seattle. Take a look at Seattle. They were under a consent decree. And they figured it out, and in fact, their results now are there's less violence and fewer police officers are being killed. There's something going on there that seems to be right. And I haven't heard anybody talk about that here today. And you know, why reinvent the wheel? Let's take a look at what they're doing in Seattle. And I think what they're doing is they're doing that training that we're all talking about is appropriate. And I think with a bill like this, it's going to force the discussion. Rather than say we might, we will, it's going to force us to put more money into this training that is critically important. And it's going to change a culture that needs to be changed. And so, with that, I want to keep our law enforcement safe, and I believe when we do this kind of training, we will be able to do that. When the goal is to try to de-escalate to the extent possible, and there's nothing in this bill that I read that says you can't use deadly force if you deem it is necessary to protect yourself or others. But you got to recognize that that isn't the only answer here, and that we've got to try other things to the extent possible. And so I want to thank the author. I appreciate all the efforts that you've taken. I appreciate the opportunity to express my position on this, because when the bill first came out, I really wasn't sure I could support this. But I think you've created that balance. Our public safety people, they're there to protect us, and we just want to make sure that's why they're there. And so with that, I will be happy to move the bill, Madam Chair.